In this episode, an overview of the SGM-3500 series of microphones from Azden. This entire episode is recorded with the Azden SGM-3500L shotgun microphone. It's boomed just here, out of the frame, into a Zoom F4 audio recorder. We've not done any sort of post-processing on the audio except to loudness normalize it to -23 LUFS. Azden appears to be making a move upmarket with higher quality microphones with the 3500 series of microphones. At the time of this review in the United States, the SGM-3500L runs about $550 and the 3500 runs about $500. I think they've made some significant improvements from the previous generation of their microphones, namely the SGM-250. So let's take a closer look and a listen. First of all, some sample audio. Here's an audio sample for 4 different microphones. First of all, the Azden SGM-3500, the shorter version. Next up, we have the Deity S-Mic 2. After that, the Azden SGM-3500L. And then finally, the Rode NTG 4 Plus. Wanted to give you a couple of moments of sample here. All of the audio here has not been processed except to loudness normalize it to -23 LUFS. We're recording down here in my basement studio. I have a sound blanket behind the camera, one to either side of me here, and then a rug underneath me and a blanket behind me on the floor, which is a concrete floor. This is just to give you a sense for how these different microphones sound in relation to one another. All of them are being recorded into the Zoom F4, and the gain levels are pretty similar. It looked like I needed more gain for the Rode NTG 4 Plus relative to all the other mics. The other 3, both Azden's and the Deity, were at about 12 o'clock, which is about 42 dB of gain. And then the NTG 4 Plus needed somewhere closer to 50 dB of gain. So just so you have a sense for where those sit in terms of their output levels and how much amplification they each need. Let's give you a few moments of silence here so we can assess the practical noise floor on each of these 4 microphones. Next up, let's look at the off-axis rejection pattern. And to put that into context with a very practical test, here's me outdoors with an excavator digging in the dirt 300 feet away. We now have the SGM-3500L, the long version, 10-inch version, and we have the excavator running behind us, so let's give you a couple moments of silence to see how much of that it's going to reject with its polar pattern. I would say it's probably, How far would you say that excavator is?
300 feet?
300 feet, we're guessing. So there's a test here to see how the rejection works with this particular polar pattern, 3500L from Azden. All right, now we have the Deity S-Mic 2 and the excavator is rolling over here. So we can get a sense for how well this will reject that sound. Next up, we have the SGM-3500, the short version, and we do have the excavator running behind us here. I think we're picking up a little bit more of it this time, so you can definitely tell a difference with its polar pattern here. At least I can right now with what I'm hearing. We'll see what it sounds like in post, but same exact configuration. Nothing's changed except for the microphone. And it's boomed just out of the frame here, within about 18 inches of me. So there's the difference that a puller pattern can make for you. In terms of build, this is an all brass body, so it feels very, very sturdy. There are no buttons or switches, so there's nothing to really break on it. No moving parts, certainly. And I think that brass also seems to help with radio frequency interference. So if you're working with a lot of phones near the microphone, I don't think we're going to run into any issues. I haven't yet in my initial testing. In terms of self-noise, we did some practical noise floor tests with the variety of microphones that we're looking at here, and the SGM-3500 series did respectably. They cite a noise floor of 13 dBA weighted, which is actually quite good for a shotgun microphone, very much in line with high-end shotgun microphones as well. For example, the Schoeps CMIT 5U runs the same spec. In terms of overall self-noise with our practical noise floor tests, in the studio basement here with sound blankets around me, nothing else on in the room except for some wind noise outside, they all did quite well. So I think they definitely fall within the acceptable range where you're not going to be fighting with a self-noise floor generated by the microphone itself. So you're not going to have to do a bunch of cleanup in post to compensate for a noisy microphone. The microphone comes with this hard plastic case, a foam windscreen, and a microphone stand clip. And the microphone stand clip actually is quite nice. A lot of times those microphone stand clips come with the 5/8 to 3/8 inch adapter in them, and it's really difficult to get that adapter out. In this one, they actually put a lip around the edge, which makes it a lot easier to get out. And it's definitely usable for statically booming your microphone if you're going to put it on a stand. If you're going to be booming by hand, I think you'll still definitely want to get a proper shock mount. So running through the pros from my perspective so far with the limited testing I've done, number one, I think sound quality wise, this is definitely a step forward for the Azden. I think it sounds much smoother than the original SGM-250. So I think Azden has really made some steps forward as far as audio quality is concerned. The 3500L does really well in terms of isolating the sound that you want and rejecting the sound that you don't want. So if you're going to be using a microphone outdoors and you really want to be able to manage the off-axis noise, then the 3500L looks like it does really, really well. The 3500 is a little bit more forgiving, so if you don't get the microphone aimed just right, it will still pick it up and still sound quite nice. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. It depends on what you're doing. If you are going to be shooting a mix of indoors and outdoors, I think that the 3500 is probably a better choice. The 3500L is more likely to experience phase issues if you're recording indoors in a reverberant space where the sound is sort of bouncing off the walls and you're getting that echo. Echo is kind of the layman's term. Technically, that's reverb. But if you are going to be in those situations, I think the 3500 would probably be a better choice of these two. Now, that's not the Azden's fault. That's just a reality of an interference tube design of shotgun microphones. The longer the interference tube, the more you could potentially experience those types of issues in a reverberant space. However, if you're going to be working primarily outdoors, that 3500L has a really nice narrow polar pattern, which is super useful. There is a 10-year warranty on these microphones, so that is fantastic. I believe there's only one other company in the industry that offers a 10-year warranty on their microphones. Are there any cons? Well, from my point of view, here are a couple things that people could identify as cons. They may or may not, depending on your situation. Number one, there is no battery option. So there's no battery slot, so you do have to phantom power this microphone from whatever you're plugging it into. That's not generally going to be a con in most situations, but if you were looking for something battery powered, probably need to look somewhere else. There's also no inbuilt high-pass filter, so if you want to be able to switch that on and take care of any sort of low-frequency rumble, wind noise, low-frequency hums from air conditioning and other things like that, this doesn't have it built in, so you're going to need to rely on your recorder to do that or do it in post. So how does this compare to other microphones? We compared it here to the Rode NTG4 Plus and also the DDS Mic 2. I think my impression is overall, first of all, I have become less and less of a fan of the Rode NTG4 Plus. Now, no offense meant to anyone who likes that microphone. If you like it and it's working for you, that is fantastic. But when I set them up right next to each other, the NTG4 Plus doesn't sound as nice to me as the 3500, the 3500L, and the DADS Mic 2. In terms of sound, there was very little difference between the DADS Mic 2 and the two Azden SGM-3500s. I really like the 3500L for its very narrow, very focused polar pattern. So we're talking here about a hypercardioid polar pattern, and that can be really, really helpful, especially when you're working outdoors. You've got a lot of noise around you, and you want to be able to isolate and just get the sound of the person that you're recording That's where the 3500L really shines. When it comes to the Deity S-Mic 2 and the 3500, that's where things become a little bit more difficult to choose. I think they kind of ran neck and neck for the most part. They were very, very similar in terms of sound, pretty similar in terms of the practical noise results. The benefit of the 3500 is that it's a little bit shorter and therefore a little bit lighter than the Deity S-Mic 2. So there is that. That is a pro there. But overall, I think it's a little bit more of a toss-up. Now, I think you're going to find, at least in the United States here, the Deity S-Mic 2 has probably got the 3500 beat in terms of price. So there's another trade-off in that direction. I think weight can be important. If you're going to be booming the mic at the end of a boom pole all day long and holding it above your head, having something that's lighter weight is a definite advantage. So that's something to consider as well if that's what you'll be doing. If you'll be statically booming, seems like the S-Mic 2 is still a really good option and at a lower price. So overall, there's a look at the SGM-3500 series of microphones, shotgun microphones from Azden. I would say very nice job to Azden for definitely stepping things up, producing a better sounding microphone, producing a microphone with a more focused puller pattern that can work really, really nicely for isolating the sound you want when you're working outdoors. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you have not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.